Growing up, I had an addiction to horror movies. I was always drawn to them. It was a slow progress of me going from having horrible nightmares post-movie to me just being completely desensitized to it. That's not to say that I don't still get scared, but my fears are not directed towards real people and how extremely vile they can be. That being said, I was surprised to see that Netflix put out a Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel. I don't know how much they advertised it, but I'd be lying if I said that I had heard of it at all. Unfortunately, this movie turned out to be something I wasn't quite expecting, so let me explain what I mean. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is set 50 years after the events of its predecessor, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it's nuts to see the creative folk in charge of naming this bad boy settle with just removing the from the title. I'm sure this won't cause any confusion with potential viewers. Anyway, the movie follows a chef named Dante and his business partner Melody. They plan to rejuvenate the abandoned town of Harlow, Texas. With them, they brought Melody's sister Lila and Dante's partner. I want to go on the record that while I'm not sure if the movie properly introduces Dante's partner, IMDb did in fact confirm her to be named Ruth. The reason I bring this up is because the captioners must have also thought she was disposable because they labeled her as Dante's partner when she would speak, so... Anywho, once arriving at the town, they appraise it and make sure everything is ready for the investors coming that same day to check out the homes. As they walk around, they see a house with a Confederate flag hung outside, and this building also coincidentally used to be an orphanage. They enter to remove it and run into the caretaker of said orphanage, who becomes outraged that they are in her home. They explain that they have the deeds to all the properties, and the cops are called to remove her from the premises, which causes her to get a heart attack. It is at this point that I want to mention that there is a man living with the lady, and if at this point you haven't guessed it, he is in fact Leatherface, who is no longer killing due to the lady's influence, I guess. As the lady is having her heart attack, the two cops at the scene, Leatherface and Ruth, hop into the cop car and take the lady to the hospital, while the remaining three stay in Harlow for a meeting with the investors. En route to the hospital, the old lady dies and thus begins the Leatherface's killing spree. Now that that info dump is all done, let me address a few things that had me going crazy. So when the old lady dies, Leatherface grabs one of the officer's arms and somehow shatters it down the middle and uses the bone to stab him in the neck to kill him. Then he takes the officer's other arm and uses it to shoot the cop. And I must admit that I don't know what John Wick hoo-ha bullshit happened, but how the fuck? By the way, the movie really goes out of its way to paint Dante and the investors as the stereotypical hipster douchebags, but I must admit that it was funny when Leatherface eventually walks into the party bus. The investors are all in, and they all pull out their phones to live stream, and one of them goes as far to tell him,
"Try anything and you cancel, bro."
This leads to probably the goriest murder fantasy I've seen in recent years, with the movie pretty much showing how Leatherface fucking claps everyone in detail for, I guess, reasons. At one point, Melody is trying to quietly get out of the orphanage without alerting Leatherface, when Leatherface somehow is able to access Thor's powers and teleports right behind her. Then he yeets his hammer at her. Also, might I add that she gets knocked down a whole floor, goes through the floor into the crawl space, and is somehow uninjured, which is just baffling. Now, if you saw the original, you know that a girl named Sally survived the original incident. She is shown throughout the movie here and there making her way slowly to Harlow, because apparently she had become a cop and spent the past 50 years searching for Leatherface. She ends up arriving just in time to save Lila and Melody from getting clapped by Leatherface. But she tries to take him on instead of fleeing and just gets completely destroyed, as you assume someone in their late 60s would. Leatherface literally puts his chainsaw into her gut and slices up, but then she shoots at him with her shotty a little later, so I guess maybe she's invincible or something. Then at one point, Leatherface runs from the sisters and Lila chases after him. He heads to a place with a lot of hiding spots, and I remember the scene from earlier in the movie where he shot the cop in the head with the gun, and I thought it would just be hilarious if Leatherface just said fuck it to using the chainsaw and came out with something extremely over the top, like a rocket launcher for example, and just started blowing everybody up. The sisters do eventually end up fighting Leatherface, and as Lila's about to potentially die, we get possibly the worst slow-mo I have ever seen. The scene literally drops to below 10 frames per second, and I felt like I was watching a PowerPoint presentation. It was just so unwatchable, and it quite literally made my eyes hurt. After the sisters beat Leatherface, they begin to leave, and Lila decides to pick up Sally's hat for who knows what fucking reason, since they didn't really know her and now she's dead, I guess? it really wasn't made all that clear. I don't know, I'm still hung up on her taking the hat because she puts it on too. Like, what the fuck? The sisters eventually decide to finally leave, and they get in their car, which I'm assuming is like a Tesla or something since they put in the address and it began driving away on its own. But then Leatherface comes out of nowhere and snatches Melody and just chops her head off while the car drives off. The movie ends with Lila screaming out loud and Leatherface doing some weird dance as the movie transitions into the ending credits. Yeah, it ends just like that. I have to be honest and say that this movie was extremely disappointing. The characters kept making more and more dumb decisions throughout the entirety of the movie, and even though you could tell that the actors were doing their best to try to carry the movie, there is only so much you can do when the script sucks this bad. It shouldn't be much of a surprise for me to say that I give this movie a hard nay. It's not good, it's a huge waste of time. Literally, the only reason you should watch this movie is if for some reason you need to watch every horror movie or something. Now, if you're some sort of freak and want to submit yourself to torture, you can catch Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix. With that being said, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you want to hear me say more? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you can catch all my future videos. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, this has been Subtly Artistic. Peace out.